Mr. Charles Larry Deibert, better known as Larry Deibert, was born in Longview, Washington, June 3, 1936. His father worked in the forest for most of his life, and his mother homesteaded in Longview, Washington, after her ride in a covered wagon from Idaho. At age 6, his family moved to Hood River, where he went to grade school and graduated from Y East High School. After his graduation, he worked in the woods and then moved on to working on tugboats. After about a year and a half, Larry figured out that working in the woods and on tugboats was not his calling, so he volunteered for the draft and joined the Marines, which was a 2-year commitment. Boot camp and radio telegraph school preceded his tour with the 1st Marine Regiment of the 1st Marine Division based out of Camp Pendleton. Once done with his active requirement, he was placed into the Marine Reserve, which didn't last long. A safety inspector at his logging site invited him to show up for the Oregon Army National Guard drill in Hood River, which was Company D, 162 Engineer Battalion, 41st Infantry Division, where he swore he knew almost everyone there through high school or work connections.
Well, I ended up going down, and when I walked in, I swear I knew every person there. We, either played sports or was in school together or was in the Hood River High School. Anyway, I literally knew virtually everyone there, so I ended up transferring from the Marine Corps Reserve into the Oregon Army National Guard in Hood River.
It wasn't long until his old high school shop teacher, a staff officer in this battalion, talked him into becoming an officer. Mr. Deibert was a proud member of Class 4 of the Oregon Military Academy. After his commission, Mr. Deibert transferred to the aviation unit at the Portland Air Base and went to flight school at Fort Rucker, Alabama, graduating in May of 1964. He trained in fixed-wing aircraft, the O-1 Bird Dog. He enjoyed flying so much, he volunteered for a tour of duty in Vietnam. He had no idea what impact that decision would have on the rest of his life. The 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg is where 1st Lieutenant Deibert reported for duty. An airborne haircut and jump school were the first hurdles for 1st Lieutenant Deibert. Being a 30-year-old at airborne school made him the oldest by far in his class, which earned him his nickname Pop. But being a bit older never bothered him. Age isn't a barrier to a guy like Larry. After 3 weeks in the Dominican Republic flying as a right-seat unrated Huey pilot, 1st Lieutenant Deibert went back to Fort Bragg, where he completed his transition course and was rated in the H-13, the chopper highlighted in the MASH TV series. He could now fly both fixed-wing and rotary. It's a good idea to have some training in jungle warfare before you go and fight in the jungle. So that's exactly what he did, spending 3 weeks in jungle school in Panama, earning himself his first jungle patch, which he later complemented with 2 other jungle warfighting courses while serving in Vietnam. After completing his first jungle school, his orders were cut for Vietnam, so he took 30 days leave, moved his family to Portland, and readied himself for the ride of his life. The 15th of January 1967 was the first day in Vietnam for the future CASA of Oregon. Mr. Deibert was assigned to the 220th Recon Airplane Company, which was a company of forward air controllers in the I-Corps area. His first 3 months in country, he was assigned to the 1st Platoon, which was located at Quang Ngai, in the southernmost unit of O-1 Bird Dogs in I-Corps, which flew in support of the 1st Marine Division, Army Special Forces, and the Republic of Vietnam's Army. He also flew a lot of naval gunfire missions. After 3 months, he was assigned as the unit's Assistant S2, and also continued flying daily missions, so it wasn't long before he got a chance to command his own platoon. Captain Deibert took control of the 220th 4th Platoon, which was under the control of the 3rd Marine Division. For the next 6 months, Captain Deibert would be flying with a Marine in the rear seat in direct support of the Marines fighting in the DMZ. Captain Deibert flew 723 flying hours, which translated into 570 missions. 73 of these missions were flying over North Vietnam and were codenamed Banjo. One of these missions would help define the rest of his life. On September 10, 1967, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Congressional Medal of Honor, for flying in to orchestrate support for an overwhelmed Marine battalion near Con Tien. An understrength Marine battalion was under attack by 2 regiments of North Vietnamese. The enemy outnumbered the Marines 6-1, so every air asset in the area was called in to assist the outnumbered Marines for air support. Captain Deibert was in the area. Captain Deibert had just taken off and was immediately called to the fight. Under concentrated enemy and friendly fire in his O-1 Bird Dog, call sign Cat Killer 46, Captain Deibert observed the fight, called in enemy locations, and dropped spotting rounds to help pinpoint where the enemy fire was coming from, on 2 separate missions totaling almost 7 hours. Even after several warnings from the ground to leave the area, Captain Deibert returned after quickly changing out his badly damaged plane to continue his mission. Mr. Deibert now would call it a fluke, but fluke or not, one of his white phosphorus spotting rockets hit directly onto an area where 7 machine gun positions were emplaced, destroying 3 of them. This round pinpointed exactly where concentrated enemy fire was coming from, which aided further air support assets to precisely engage these targets, thus helping to turn the tide of the fight. He also directed helicopters to secure landing points to help medevac the wounded Marines. Captain Deibert's selfless and courageous acts helped save many lives, and his bravery is an example of the highest kind. His actions that day would place him in a group few would be able to join. Captain Deibert landed safely back at his base that day, finished his tour, returned back to Oregon, and started the next phase of his life. He continued his military service with the Oregon National Guard, spending 5 years with the 41st Infantry Division's Aviation Section. After that, he transferred to the Army Reserve's 104th Training Division, headquartered out of Vancouver, Washington, eventually becoming their Division Aviation Officer. His full-time occupation as a salesman for a Yellow Page publisher eventually landed him the sales manager position. Later on, he set up his own ad agency, National Management Services, again selling ads in the Yellow Pages, and did well for himself. In 2003, Mr. Deibert was interviewed and appointed the CASA position for Oregon, which stands for the Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army, and has been reappointed 4 times. This position has the protocol rating of a 3-star general. Mr. Deibert retired as a major after 22 years of combined active and reserve service. Other awards issued to Mr. Deibert include 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, a Bronze Star, 2 Meritorious Service Medals, 3 Vietnam Crosses for gallantry, 1 with Silver Star, 1 with Bronze Star, and 1 with Palm Leaf, and 25 separate awards for the Air Medal, just to name a few. Some of the affiliations Mr. Deibert belongs to are the Legion of Valor of the United States, which he was a national commander of from 2001 to 2002, life member of the International Bird Dog Association, and life member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and is a life member of many more military organizations. Mr. Deibert currently resides in Corbett, Oregon on a working ranch with his wife Suzanne. For years, they've bred exotic animals, but now they manage the ranch and volunteer their time at the Helping Hands Food Bank. Mr. Deibert also enjoyed many years playing and coaching softball. Well, that's the short story of who this building is named after. Few Oregonians have made such selfless contributions to help ensure the liberties we as Americans enjoy in this country. So when you look at that plane above you, remember the story of Larry Deibert and the men like him that literally flew in the face of death to protect our freedom.